welcome to my channel if you've been here before. If not, welcome. My name is Ashley and this is going to be the start of like my Mafia romance readathon vlog. It's already Saturday, so I've read 1.5 books, like I'm in the process of reading the second one now, and it's been great so far. So yesterday I read or listened to Twisted Pride by Cora Riley on audiobook while I was at work, and I just didn't film an update because I was so exhausted after work. But essentially it's a captive romance within Cora Riley's like Kimura Chronicles like world and like her larger world that she's been building. Basically it's covering Ramo and Serafina. Ramo ends up kidnapping Serafina because she's the niece of like another outfit's capo. He basically is trying to get back at that like specific outfit for a bunch of different reasons, and he decides to do something kind of like off the wall and crazy, and he kidnaps Serafina the day of her wedding. So they kidnap her, she's fully in her wedding dress, like on the way to the church, and oh my god, I did not think I was gonna like it as much as I did, just because like Cora Riley's writing and like her romances have been pretty hit or miss for me, and I have been enjoying the Kimura Chronicles way more than I did the Born in Blood series, so I was kind of worried that I was going to pick this book up and hate it, but it was really good. I gave it a 4-star. For me, the only reason that it wasn't 5 stars is because I tend to like watching my characters get together more than I like reading them established. So for this, the conflict happens more so like in the middle of the book. We get like the captor-captive like relationship. You see them kind of like growing to like and respect each other as much as they can. Then there's like the conflict in the middle of the book between the two of them and their relationship, and then they end up like kind of fixing it and further like establishing their relationship in the last third of the book, which I didn't hate, but I definitely like I didn't want to see so many like insides of like their relationship and how things were going. I felt like it was almost too much, and I was like, okay, like we can wrap this up, as much as like I enjoyed it. So I kind of felt bad about that. But what really like made it such a great book for me is that Ramo and Serafina are so well matched as like a couple. Like Ramo is, especially like next to his brother Nino, said to be this like really hot-headed character. He's very like rash in his decision making. He acts a lot on like emotions, whether that's like anger or like the sense of like seeking revenge or what have you. And Serafina, like most of the women in like the Mafia world, especially like within like Cora Riley's series, is basically like this really like gentle like girl on the outside. She's like known to be like the ice princess, and everybody thinks that she's like very like put together in almost like a regal sense, and in actuality her family knows that she's like a huge spitfire, especially like her twin Samuel. So when she gets kidnapped by Ramo, as much as she's like terrified of him because of like his reputation preceding him, she's also extremely headstrong the entire time. So it was really like fun to watch her kind of push back to everything he was saying to her, and it was great to watch him like learn to respect her over time because of who she is as a person, which I found like amazing, because the women within like Cora Riley's world, like they don't tend to have anything outside of being like a wife and a mother. So having a strong personality in these characters is amazing, and Serafina definitely like brings that to the table, which was great. Then I also really enjoyed like the family dynamics. Serafina and her family are amazing. I love them interacting with one another, especially her and her like twin Samuel. And then I love the Falcone brothers and like Fabiano together. Like they're amazing. I love that like brotherhood and like found family aspects within them. So I think that also made it a little difficult, but it was like so sweet to read just because I loved Serafina and Samuel together. I loved like reading their like relationship, and I could tell how hard it was that Serafina was getting married just because she wouldn't be with her twin anymore, and then to get kidnapped on top of that made it even more so difficult because then she wasn't even able to like visit as she would have been if they were still like within the same like mafia. And it was so hard because I felt so bad for everyone in every way. Then later on, when the conflict happens, her family believes that she's been like sexually assaulted by Ramo, so they're constantly on her, like they really care about her. They like offer to get her like therapy and everything. They want to avenge her. They want to like make sure they hurt Ramo in like defense of her. There's like so much guilt because they feel like they didn't protect her as well as they should have. And it was just all so sweet because you could tell how much they care about her, especially like reading like the Born in Blood like chronicles, where specifically like the Scuderi sisters and like Fabiano have to deal with their father who just does not care about them. Like this was like a really refreshing like read because like it's the first time we're really starting to see a family dynamic within the Mafia where they genuinely care for like one another and they're doing everything they can to protect one another, and it was so sweet. And then in the same regard, like I love watching Ramo with his brothers, and it was so nice to watch Serafina kind of like interact within their world and like get to know each of the brothers, even if she's like arguing with them or they feel like they can't trust her all the way. They like grow to trust her over time because of like what she does for Ramo, and it was so good. Then I started reading Crow, which hits a lot of the prompts on the bingo board I made, which I'll put my bingo board here. I'm not gonna lie, I'm enjoying it so much already that I think I might, like, I didn't have a set TBR already, but I think I'm gonna, like, just say screw it and try to finesse it so I can read the rest of the series, because I believe the third book deals with the Russian Mafia. So technically, if I figure out a way to include the second book, I could transition into the third book and it will count for Russian Mafia. Granted, I would have to change my like TBR, but we'll see what happens. But I'm reading Crow right now, and that's by A. Zavarelli. It's amazing. I love a strong character, especially when it comes to the heroines, but I especially love an element of like sports and like fighting, and that's what we have here. So basically it covers Lachlan Crow. He's just lost his like grandfather who was like the underboss of the like Irish Mafia, and they think it was like an inside job essentially that like killed his grandfather. So not only is he dealing with like his grief and trying to like take his grandfather's place because it's between him and the leader's son to take over as underboss, but he also is just like trying to figure out this mystery of who put his grandfather in harm's way and got his grandfather killed. So it immediately opens up to like a lot of sadness on both of the characters' parts. Oh my god, I'm forgetting the name of the girl, which sucks because I really like her. But I'm going on Goodreads to see. And then on her half, she basically, let's see, I remember her friend's name, but not her, which I feel bad. Mackenzie. So on her behalf, like, Mac is trying to find her friend. She's like talking to police officers. They're kind of like brushing her off. She's talking to the FBI. They're like, okay, yeah, like another missing girl. And she's basically telling them like her friend Talia was like a good person. She's like showing like the FBI like woman she's talking to photos of her and basically being like, yeah, we've been living on the streets, we've been impoverished, we've been dealing with all of these things, but she shouldn't be falling through the cracks right now. Like, I really need your guys' help to, like, find her. And at one point, she basically casually mentions that she feels like they should put somebody in at the Mafia to go undercover, and that she'll, like, help. And they're like, we don't have any resources for that. So she offers to do it herself, and they basically told her absolutely not. But because she, like, really loves her friend, wants to know what happens to her friend, wants to try to find her friend, she decides to do it anyway. So she goes pretty much undercover in the Mafia, and she begins by going to one of the, like, underground fights that they run. And her father, who passed away when she was 13, is the reason that she's, like, was in foster care and met her friend Talia, who, like, went missing later, was a huge, like, boxer in, like, the underground world. So was her grandfather. She's, like, a second generation, like, Irish immigrant, and, or, like, descendant, and she basically claims her father's title by going to this fight and fighting a member of the Irish Mafia. And when she does that, the Russian Mafia, who's trying to make an alliance with the Irish Mafia, and the Irish Mafia, like, pay attention to her. She ends up meeting Crow, who off the bat wants nothing to do with her, but he's very attracted to her. And later on, she keeps on trying to show up because she wants to get a job so she can, like, get deeper into, like, the inner workings of things and figure out what happened to her friend. And it's just been such a good ride so far. As, like, things develop, he cares more and more about her, and he's more and more protective of her. And she's, like, actually, like, a virgin heroine, which we see often in Mafia, but, like, not within this, like, world's context where these are outsiders that are coming in. So it's amazing to see, like, just her living her life, and she's, like, genuinely starting to care about him, and she's feeling guilt because she knows that she's here to try to figure out what happened to her friend. She really cares about him, and she's trying to find out whether or not he was involved so she can kind of, like, alleviate that, like, stress off of her, like, chest, and, like, that guilt off of her chest. And it's just been so good because you can tell that Lachlan, like, Crow, is a good guy. You watch him, like, interact with his, like, brothers within, like, the Mafia, and he really sticks by them. They stick by him so much, and I'm obsessed with his friends, so I'm really trying to read the rest of the series just because they're so great together. But I will let you know how I feel when I'm done, hopefully later today, because I'm pretty deep into it and I'm, like, reading it pretty quickly. And then I'm going to try and finesse my way into reading the second book. I don't know what I'm going to read for my final book because I'm trying to read, like, 4 to 6. So hopefully I can do 4 because this one covers so many prompts. And we'll see from there. I'll check in with you guys later. Hi. Okay. Lighting is weird. Whatever. It's nighttime. I just finished Crow. I think that this is the first, like, Mafia romance that I'm gonna have to give 5 stars. Like, amazing. So many qualities that, like, I really love and enjoy. Both of the characters, like I said before, are, like, really strong characters on their own. I love, like, learning about them individually. And I feel like you can see how much Lachlan cares about Mackenzie throughout the entirety of the book, even when it's, like, coming from, like, this base of he thinks that he's just, like, lusting after her, but he really sees her as a person, really comes to want to protect her. And Mackenzie, as strong as she is, as determined as she is to, like, find out what happened to her friend Talia, she's falling into this, like, comfortable situation with Lachlan that she hates, but at the same time she feels like she really needs and she really wants. And it's so good. It was so good. And and then at one point in, like, the book, something happens to Mackenzie, and Lachlan shows up for her, And Crow just goes absolutely wild because he's so, like, worried about her and wants to, like, protect her and wants to show, like, strength for her in a moment where she is unable to be strong for herself, pretty much. And he goes on, like, this rampage basically asking if anybody, like, around them had hurt her, and he acts on it if they did, and so good, so good. I love the two of them so much. You see how, like, willing he is to risk, like, so much of his life and, like, his passions and wants within, like, the mafia that he's in and everything. And unlike the same situations that I've read before in other mafia romance books or in other, like, romance books in general, this is the first time that I've seen a character give something up and it's been realistic. Like, he's giving up this, like, potential thing he's been after this entire time, but it's not gonna, like, destroy him or put him in, like, crazy harm's way. Even though, like, there is that level of, like, risk, we've, like, gotten a chance to really be like, everything that I wanted is not as important as you and our relationship. And amazing. So good. So good. I'm also, like, really obsessed with Ronan right now. I know that, like, Reaper is the second book in the series, and it just got brought up that he goes by, like, the Reaper in the first book, so now I'm extremely interested to figure out, like, why he goes as the Reaper, like, beyond just his role in the Mafia. And I want to pick that up because it's also pretty much, like, hinted at who's his, like, intended for the second book, and I think the two of them would be so cute together, and I want to know why they haven't gotten together already, because they've known each other for years, so that's going to be great. That book was not supposed to be on my TBR. I didn't make a set TBR, but it wasn't supposed to be on my TBR, but I think I'm going to have to, like, figure out a way to make it work. I don't know. Oh my god. I just can't stop thinking about Crow. Like, no Mafia romance book I read this entire year thus far has made me give it a 5 stars. I read this book and I like it so much that I'm like, should I question my morals? Are my morals in question? Is my humanity going grayscale right now? I don't know. I loved it. It was so good. I honestly, there's definitely some, like, trigger warnings in it, just outside of, like, dark romance in general. Like, human trafficking comes up a lot in this book. Sex work comes up a lot in this book. Some of which is, like, by choice, some of which is, like, forced hand. So those are things that people should be wary of. I'm trying to remember what else. Oh, we have sexual assault come up, as well as, like, sexual assault of minors, molestation of minors, things like that. I'm gonna try and remember to flag all of it in my, like, trigger warning sections of my story graph, and I'll link my story graph, like, down below so you guys can, like, go through that, and of course, like, look up reviews just in case, like, anything in particular, like, triggers you. But if those things won't bother you too much to take away from the book, amazing. Probably, like, my favorite Mafia read of all time. I don't see any other book doing it this perfectly. And, like, I'm very obsessed with Nina Falcone from Cora Riley's, like, series, from Twisted Emotions. That book was so good. But this book took the cake. Sorry. Ah! Now I'm kind of worried for, like, the rest of the weekend, just because I don't know what I'm going to pick up, really. And I don't know if it's going to be as good as this book. Like, I have started very strong this weekend. I only really want to read, like, a handful of books. And Crow checked off a lot on my bingo board, so we're getting into weird territory, but I hope whatever I pick up is nice. I'll see you guys tomorrow. I'm gonna start Reaper right now. I say that like I didn't already start. So I'm going to continue Reaper right now and like finish it. But I'm enjoying it. I'm not super deep in, so we'll see where it goes. But I'll probably read that for a majority of like the night because it's pretty late already, and then finish it tomorrow, and then pick up like whatever random book I can. See you then. Bye. I have recorded this several times because I just simply never remember any character's name unless I'm obsessed with the book. Even if I just finished it, I'm just like, eh. But basically, hi, hello. It is Sunday, around like 4 o'clock, and I've finished 2 books today, and that's gonna be the end of like my Mafia romance readathon because A, it's the last day of the readathon, and B, actually covered everything on my board. Granted, there was a little finesse that happened because in The Reaper by Azzarelli, the character he has a tattoo, but he's not tattooed, and then he gets another tattoo after that to cover up the original one. So I'm going to count it as a tattooed hero. It's fine. And then after that, I read Brutal Prince, I believe, by Sophie Lark. Yes. Okay, so for me, Reaper was definitely like a 4-star read. I loved both of the characters. The thing that kind of like lost me for it was you kind of see very directly where Azzarelli is going with like the writing, because both characters don't really have like healthy like long-term like relationships in their life, especially like Reaper. What's his name? I'm pretty sure it starts with an L. I never remember. Let's see. Ronan. Okay. So, Ronan, he goes through like some extreme childhood trauma. Like, I'm talking physical, mental, emotional, psychological, like really, really bad. Like, it is severe. He basically, it's not really a spoiler. He grows up on like this military like base pretty much, but they're like extremists, and he's been there his entire life. Like, some of the kids come in when they're like a little older, so they kind of know like who their families were, or they've like experienced the world. He basically was born and raised there. He knows nothing but that world. He ends up leaving when he's a little older, and that's how he meets Crow, and they like become friends, and they both end up like immigrating to like the United States, what have you. So they're in the Irish Mafia together. This whole time, they are like working and like hanging out and like torturing essentially in this like club that they own, and he's obsessed with one of the dancers there, who's Sasha. He's been into her for years, and she's been into him for years. They just have not made a move, and it's like their love story. So while he's dealing with all of this like messed up childhood trauma, she's literally dealing with the fact that like her father died when she was younger. It was kind of abrupt. Her sister, and her mom basically have been living in like poverty this whole time. That her mom gets cancer, so she's dealing with like a sick mother, which like it gets brought up in the first book that like her mom's sick, and that's like a huge part of the reason that she's like working and like has been stripping for like a while. And then it's brought up further into this book. But basically, as Sasha's like dealing with all of this, they start to get closer and closer and actually start to open up to one another. And you see how both of them just have not had those connections that they were supposed to develop as human beings. So we get little excerpts of Ronan's like past, and we get some excerpts of also Sasha's past and like toxic relationships she's been in and stuff like that. and we get to learn more about them as individuals, which I really, really loved. The lighting is so bright over here, which I really, really loved. And from there, we start to see how they become each other's salvation, which I hate in a book. I'm so sorry. But I hate, like, sex will fix it, love will fix it, especially when it's something, like, as deeply rooted as what they're going through, especially Ronan. Like, that just doesn't work. It's not realistic. It's not healthy. However, I do see that there is some merit in the fact that because they were lacking so much in relationships, the relationship they have with one another is so important to them. And that's what makes it, like, this, like, huge, like, salvation moment. I can't live without you, blah, 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 blah. And I think Ronan in particular, he has, like, a huge, like, growing curve that he does exhibit throughout the books, both, like, opening up to her and, like, his, like, best friend, as well as, like, other people he's close to and, like, the Mafia, who he respects and actually trusts, and also, like, Crow's girlfriend / I think wife at that point. And it's so cute. However, there's steamy scenes that I absolutely hated, which rarely happens for me in adult romance. Sometimes I'm like, okay, we don't need these many, like, sex scenes in a book. Like, I genuinely don't need it. But for me, the amount was fine. I just felt that it was, like, pretty cold and, like, uncomfortable and awkward. But it is written well in terms of why it's cold and uncomfortable and awkward. So I'm gonna give it a pass. I definitely want to pick up the third book. However, in the course of the first and second book, you kind of figure out some things about where the third book is going. And I don't know if I'm gonna love it now, so I'm kind of worried about that. But I will say, Crow was amazing. I really enjoyed Reaper. Both of them are just, like, great dudes. For the series, sexual assault is huge, so that's a big trigger warning. Human / sex trafficking is huge, so that's also, like, really big. Of course, like, the general, like, dark romance, like, mafia romance stuff, like, violence, gun violence in particular, like, body horror, gore, stuff like that. In the second book, Reaper, we have a lot of, like, grief, a lot of trauma, childhood sexual assault, domestic abuse, toxic relationships. So those are all things to look out for. I will link my Goodreads and Storygraph below. That way you guys have, like, a more clear idea of, like, the trigger warnings that are going to come up in the book. But both of them were really great. I really enjoyed it. After that, I read Brutal Prince. And here's my thing. I hate when people, like, this mafia romance, in almost every case, is a dark romance. So I hate when people are like, oh my god, the guy was, like, so mean, blah, 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 blah. There is a very rare circumstance where I feel like I'm reading something, especially, like, going into it knowing that the content is going to be darker, where I'm like, wow, that guy was horrible and I couldn't stand him. Callum does that for me. He wasn't too bad in the course of the book. I definitely think that it was still funny and I enjoyed it. I gave it 3 stars. But we start out the book with Ada and her brothers, because she's, like, the youngest and she's the only girl. They basically, like, crash a party at Callum's house for his youngest sister, who's, like, similar in age to Ada. And Ada ends up, like, going into the house. She goes to the library and she gets, like, trapped in there pretty much because Callum, like, walks in and she tries to start, like, a little distraction so he'll look the other way, and she ends up setting the curtains on fire. So it was, like, accidental but not accidental. Callum is pissed for several reasons. Another one, like, will come up throughout the book. And he basically wants to start this, like, gang war between his family and her family, because his family is Irish and her family is Italian. And their families have been having like this ongoing feud for years now. They have like lost a lot of family members because of these feuds that they've had, and they've kind of like transitioned away mostly, especially like Callum's family, from more of like this organized like crime like street like life to more like corruption and like business owning and like political stuff that they're like doing now. But her family is like more traditional in a sense where it's more like they'll go in guns blazing, it doesn't matter, like they fight for their own. And I really enjoyed both of their family dynamics as a whole. Like, I love Callum's family, love Ada's family. I'm obsessed with like her youngest of her brothers. And I think everyone is like super sweet. However, we start the book with Callum being extremely pissed off at Ada and her youngest of her brothers because he thinks that he's the one who did everything. So he's like really mad. He does something horrible to Sebastian, and from there like things could go really bad until her father and his father sit down and have this like talk, which ends in an arranged marriage basically to smooth things over, so like there's not more loss. All of this would be fine, except then we move into situations where Callum is still mad. There's slurs against Italians and Irish people in the book, which I thought was very weird. And then you would think when we're getting to an enemy's like hateful like moment where slurs are being said, to the end where like they love each other, we would have a better transition period, but we don't. Pretty much Ada and him are just put in like these instances where like they go places because Callum's like working on like this political career he wants to start, and she like sticks up for him or she helps him in terms of like everything that's going on, and he starts to see value in her. They begin like actually being friends. They like start to love each other, and like at this point of course they're already married. And she makes a comment about how their whole relationship has been like backwards this whole time, and it's very true. Like they get married, they have sex, they become friends, and then they like fall in love. There's like some mystery elements that I really enjoyed. I think that the stakes are like well enough in terms of like there's a lot going on, but it also feels like very distant. It doesn't feel like the Mafia usually feels in these novels, especially having read the other three this weekend, because this one was way tamer in comparison. However, I really did enjoy it. I thought they were funny and I liked them together as characters. I think Ada's like really sweet to him and he's really sweet to her, but I just feel like the transition could have lasted a little longer, and I wanted more moments of like angst, a little bit of groveling. That would have been great, because once again we started with slurs, so I'm really not seeing how things worked out, but okay. But I will say that in terms of reading, this weekend was pretty fun. I really enjoyed everything I read, so thank you to the Book Refuge for putting this together. I'm gonna list her like video down below. In terms of like romance, she's like one of my favorite people to watch on like BookTube, because her recommendations are always really, really great. If I pick up something that she liked, I almost always love it. And I'll also be tagging the co-host down below, because she had a couple of co-hosts for this like weekend readathon, and it was really fun. I am definitely probably going to finish the Boston Underworld series now that I don't have to like adhere to specific tropes or anything to cross off of my bingo board, but I had a great time. I hope that if you participated, you also like read a lot of books that you really loved and enjoyed. And I'm looking forward to watching everyone's vlogs, just because I want to see if there's any books that I should have picked up and I didn't, because I will be picking those up. Anyway, I hope you have like a good reading like month. We're pretty early into June, so I hope everything you pick up is absolutely amazing. Otherwise, bye.